watching Shalom TV, celebrating Jewish culture. Funding for Shalom TV has been provided by the following. And by viewers like you.
Hi, I'm Mordechai Becher, and this is Shalom TV, Dimensions of the Daf, where we examine different sections, sugyas, sections of the Talmud, and different discussions based on the Talmud every week and every show, and each one stands independently, so there's no need to have known what we said previously to understand this show, and but we hope that you'll tune in future and look at the future shows. And also thanks a lot to people who have given me feedback, at least the positive feedback, at various times when I travel and lecture. People are always coming over to me and say, oh yeah, I saw you on Shalom TV, so it's a great thing. I always enjoy hearing that, and thank you very much. Now today we're looking at what happened to the treasures of the temple, most specifically the Holy Ark, but many of the treasures of the temple. And let me give you some historical background first of all. Jewish people under Joshua, according to biblical tradition, entered Israel in approximately 1313 BCE. That's 1313 BCE before the Common Era started, or in other words, about 3,000 or so years ago. Now, 3,300 years ago. So for the first 400 years we were in Israel. We utilized the Mishkan, the tabernacle that was built in the desert, the portable tabernacle built in the desert. That was the temple of the Jewish people, and it moved from place to place. It wasn't continuously moving, but there are a number of different places where the tabernacle was, and it was taken down and reassembled. Gilgal and Kiryat Yarim and Shiloh, etc. And the Holy Ark that was built by Moses and Aaron and the Jewish people in the desert was there, the menorah, the candelabra, the table with the showbread, and all the various components of the tabernacle that were built in the desert at the command of God were all in that Mishkan, that tabernacle. Now, about 400 years after the Jews came into Israel, 440 years after the Jews came into Israel, so we're talking now approximately 900 BCE, the first kings were anointed. The first kings of Israel were appointed as king, King Saul, then King David. Now, King David, who originally ruled from the city of Hebron, if you look in the book of Samuel, you'll see that King David was appointed as king of Israel, and he ruled from a city in Judea known as Hebron. Hebron, where the tombs of the patriarchs and matriarchs are even to this day. That was the capital of Israel for the first 8 years. Afterwards, King David moved the capital to Jerusalem, the city of Jerusalem. So the city of Jerusalem became capital of Israel about 2,900 years ago. So Jerusalem was the capital of Israel. I just wanted to get that in. Jerusalem was the capital of the state of Israel 2,900 years ago, before there was a European Union, before there was a State Department, before there was a United States, before it was united, or the states for that matter, before New York existed, London, etc. So anyway, I just had to put that in because I think that's important to know. Anyway, that's 2,900 years ago. So Jerusalem is the capital. King David was not allowed to build the temple, but his son, King Solomon, had a huge building project, and he enlisted Jews from all over the country. He had materials brought in from other places. Hiram, the king of Tyre in Lebanon, was a good friend and colleague, and he supplied a lot of the building materials from Lebanon, and huge building project, and eventually the temple was built in Jerusalem. And that temple lasted for approximately not approximately, but according to our tradition, 410 years. So for 410 years, the temple in Jerusalem was the religious, political, and sacrificial center of the Jewish people. That's where we prayed, we brought offerings. That's where the Sanhedrin, the Jewish Supreme Court, sat. That's where the king would appear and speak to the people. And this is a place where every Jew would make pilgrimage to 3 times a year on the 3 festivals of Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot. Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. Now, during this period, 410 years, there were various wars, as you probably know. So about 300 years into that period, so we're talking now about 600 BCE or so, the Assyrians invaded. Now, I should point out, before the Assyrians invaded, the Jewish state had split into 2 parts. There were the 10 tribes in the northern part of the country, and that was known as Israel. That was called Israel. And in the southern part of the country, which included Jerusalem, central and southern Israel, including Jerusalem, was the tribe of Judah, Yehuda, Yehuda, son of Benjamin, and also, of course, many of the priests and Levites, Kohanim and Leviim. So the Assyrian invaders, that is to say, King Sanherib, or Sennacherib in English, invaded the northern part of the state of Israel, known as Israel, and Sanherib was able to destroy much of that place, and he exiled the Jews. So most of the Jews in the northern part of Israel that represented the 10 tribes of Israel were exiled by Sanherib all over his empire, which is what we call today Asia Minor. Areas like Afghanistan, all the various stands, and that area. So, and actually there are historians that maintain that some of the Pathan tribes in Afghanistan, fundamentalist Muslims, rabidly anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, etc., they're very possibly descendants of the 10 tribes who were exiled by Sanherib. So, that's how bizarre history gets. Anyway, so the southern kingdom, which is where the temple was in Jerusalem, was ruled by a certain point by King Hezekiah, who was a righteous king of Israel, a righteous king. And by the way, since most Jews today are remnants of that southern kingdom, even though there were elements of the other 10 tribes that did come back eventually, so we are from Yehuda, and we are called Yehudim, which in Latin or Greek is Judaeus, Latin Judaeus, and we are therefore called Jews from the Judeans, or the people of the tribe of Judah, and the southern kingdom of Yehuda, Judea. And what the secular world calls the West Bank, which is, I think, a lousy name for something, West Bank, right? Actually, the traditional biblical name for that, and the name that has been called for thousands of years, is Judea and Samaria. And for obvious reasons, the media does not like calling it that, because Judea and Samaria sounds Jewish, because it was Jewish and is and has been for thousands of years. Anyway, so I digress with my rant. Let's get back to what it says in the Torah, in the Bible. So if we look on the slide here, in the second book of Kings, 18, it talks about the 14th year of Chizkiah. Sanherib comes up against all the fortified cities of Judah and took them. In other words, Sanherib made a campaign not only he had a successful campaign against the northern kingdom, and now Sanherib is trying to invade the southern kingdom of Israel. And Chizkiah, king of Judah, sent to the king of Assyria. He sent a message to him that, look, I've offended you, please withdraw, and any tax that you want, I'll pay. In other words, Chizkiah does not want a war here. So he tells Sanherib, and the purpose of the war generally was plunder. So he tells Sanherib, this Assyrian king, that I'll pay you whatever you want. Let's not have a war here. And the king of Assyria imposed on Chizkiah a fine of 300 talents of silver, 30 talents of gold. That's a lot. So Chizkiah gave him all the silver that was found in the house of God, all the treasures of the king's house. And at that time, Chizkiah even cut off the gold from the doors of the temple of the Lord and from the pillars which Chizkiah, king of Judah, had overlaid. There were pillars in the temple that were overlaid with gold, and he gave them to the king of Assyria. So for the time, that appeased Sanherib. Eventually, Sanherib anyway decided to invade, and he besieged Jerusalem. And that's Chizkiah during that time. That was when Chizkiah built the very famous broad wall, which you can still see remnants of in the old city of Jerusalem, what's called the Jewish Quarter. You can see excavated part of the remnants of the broad wall which Chizkiah built. And of course, the most famous remnant of that siege was a tunnel that Chizkiah had commanded to be dug under Jerusalem. There's a tunnel that goes from the old city of Jerusalem and outside the temple walls to a place called Silvan, or Shiloach in Hebrew. And that is an ancient tunnel that Chizkiah built so that people could safely bring water in from Shiloach, the pools of Siloam, the well and the springs of Siloam, and bring it in to the walls of Jerusalem in a safe way. That tunnel, by the way, you can still walk through the tunnel of Chizkiah, and there's a fascinating stone in the middle of that tunnel which does not exist. Well, it exists, but it's not there. It's in Istanbul, in a museum in Istanbul, and the stone that was found there describes the meeting of the two groups of diggers, the two groups of miners who were coming from different directions and met in the middle after having dug that tunnel. So it's fascinating to go through that when you think about this fact that this is a tunnel that was dug by Chizkiah, king of Judah, king of Jerusalem, at the siege of Jerusalem by the Assyrians, and you can still walk through that tunnel today. So that was the first thing. The first mention we have is Chizkiah gives to Sancherib lots and lots of gold and silver, and he even cuts some gold off the pillars of the temple and the doors of the temple. Obviously, at this point, he's not giving him the Ark or the menorah or any of the treasures of the temple, but he's giving him lots of gold and silver. Then we have, a little further along, 2 Kings chapter 20, two chapters later, Berodach Baladan, the king of Babylon, he sends letters and gifts to Chizkiah, who he heard had been sick. And Chizkiah showed these messengers, he was showing off, so to speak, all the house of his treasures, the silver, the gold, the spices, the precious ointment, and all the houses of his armor, and all that was found in his treasures. There was nothing in his house, nor in all his dominion, that Chizkiah showed them not. The Talmud considers this a sin. The Talmud says it was wrong of Chizkiah to do that. You've got treasure, that's great. Kings have treasure, that's a normal thing. But to have a certain level of, to show it off and to reveal it to these foreign messengers of this foreign king was considered inappropriate, was not considered to be within the precepts of modesty which the Torah requires. And the Talmud says was punished later on because the Babylonians later on took all of the treasures of the temple. So about 100 years or so after this whole Assyrian invasion, which Chizkiah and Jerusalem survived intact, with casualties, but basically survived, Babylonian Empire was now the great empire, and Babylonian Empire based in what we call today Iraq. That was the great empire of the time. And the Babylonian Empire under Nebuchadnezzar invaded Israel. And they invaded, or Judea as it was called, and their invasion was unfortunately successful. And the Babylonians succeeded in destroying the temple, capturing Jerusalem, destroying the temple, and they exiled the vast majority of the Jewish people. They left a small remnant in Israel, but they exiled most of the Jews to Babylon, or modern-day Iraq. So after 70 years in exile in Babylon, which of course by that time had become Persia because the Persian Empire had taken over. So the Jews are now in Babylon, Persia, Iraq, Iran, or Babylon and Persia as they were known then. And King Cyrus allows the Jews to go back to Israel. So here is very interesting. It says this, the book of Ezra, the Jews who came back to Israel under the leadership of Ezra, and this is how the book of Ezra describes it. It says, rose up the chiefs of the fathers' houses of Judah and Benjamin, and the priests and the Levites. Remember, Judah and Benjamin were the two major tribes down south. And the priests and the Levites, because they worked in the temple, so many of them lived around Jerusalem or in Jerusalem. And all those whose spirit God had stirred to go up to build the house of the Lord, which is in Jerusalem. All these people went back to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. And all those who were around them strengthened their hands with utensils of silver, gold, goods, and beasts, and precious things, all that was willingly offered. Everyone brought tons of stuff to Jerusalem. And now, this is the important verse, number 7. Also Cyrus, the king, brought forth the utensils of the house of the Lord, which Nebuchadnezzar had brought from Jerusalem, and he put them in the house of his gods. So evidently Nebuchadnezzar had taken the treasures of the temple of Jerusalem and brought them to Babylon. But now we are being told that everything that Nebuchadnezzar took to Babylon and put in the houses of his gods, Cyrus, the king, who was a righteous king, brought them back to Jerusalem. And Cyrus, king of Persia, brought them forth by the hand of Mithridat the treasurer, and counted them to Sheshbazzar, the prince of Judah. So his treasurer counts them out and gives them to the prince of Judah. And this is the number of them: 30 basins of gold, 1,000 basins of silver, 29 knives, bowls of gold, silver bowls of the second sort, 410, other utensils, 1,000. So it doesn't really say here anything about the ark or the explicitly, or the menorah and things like that, but it does say he gave back all the treasures that he'd taken. And if you look on the next screen, which is from Divrei Hayam in Chronicles, that's the last book of the books of writings of the Bible. And in Chronicles, as the name sounds in Hebrew, Divrei Hayam, in the matters of the days, what it does is recounts the entire history of the Jewish people and of humanity, going all the way back to Genesis. It goes through a whole, all the history and the genealogy and everything. So it's a whole review of everything. And in Chronicles 2, it says the following: "And all the vessels of the house of God, great and small, and the treasures of the house of the Lord, and the treasures of the king and all his friends, he, Nebuchadnezzar, brought to Babylon. And they burned down the house of gold, and broke down the wall of Jerusalem, and burned all its palaces with fire, and destroyed all its precious vessels." So it's a little difficult to know here. It says on the one hand, he took all the treasures of the house of God back to Babylon. And on the other hand, it says he destroyed all the precious vessels. So what did he take to Babylon and what was brought back? From the book of Ezra and from the book of Chronicles, it is unfortunately unclear. It's unclear. So we do have some other sources about this. Next major source we have is the book of Maccabees. Now, the book of Maccabees is not part of the Bible. It's part of the Apocrypha. That means it was written post-prophecy. Already, when there was no prophecy anymore, book of Maccabees was written, and consequently it's not considered by us to be holy as the books of the Bible, but it is an interesting historical source nonetheless. And it was written at the time of the Greek invasion of Israel, and when the Jews threw them out of Israel. It was about 2,200 years ago approximately. So in the book of Maccabees it says this: "One finds in the records that Jeremiah the prophet ordered those who were being deported," that is to say, Jeremiah lived at the time of the destruction of the first temple, "and exiled to Babylon. So he ordered those who were being deported to take the fire, some of the fire, as has been told." I'm not exactly sure what that means. Some say maybe it means the fire of the eternal lamp. Some say it means maybe the inspiration. We don't know. "And that the prophet, after giving them the law, instructed those who were being deported not to forget the commandments, or to be led astray. And with other similar words, he exhorted them that the law should not depart from their hearts." Basically, Jeremiah tells the Jews, look, you're going to Babylon, to a foreign land, leaving Israel. Don't deviate from the Torah. Keep the commandments of God. Take the fire of Jerusalem with you in your hearts. And also in the writings, it says that the prophet, having received an oracle, meaning he had a prophecy. So the book of Maccabees tells us that Jeremiah, before the Babylonian invasion, Jeremiah had a prophecy that the Babylonians would invade and steal all the stuff from the temple. So therefore, he said, order that the tent and the ark should follow them. He went to the mountain where Moses had gone up and had seen the inheritance of God. And Jeremiah came and found a cave, and he brought there the tent and the ark and the altar of incense, and he sealed up the entrance. We have no idea where this is. Some of those who followed him came to mark the way but could not find it. And Jeremiah rebuked of them, and he said, the place shall be unknown until God gathers his people together and shows his mercy. Then the Lord will disclose these things. So now, is this reliable? It's hard to say. But it is an historical source which claims that Jeremiah took the ark. So this would explain a few things, because if you remember back in the book of Chronicles and in the book of Ezra, it doesn't mention anything explicitly about the ark being taken by Nebuchadnezzar or being returned by Cyrus. It mentions treasures, it mentions gold, it mentions all this stuff from the house of God, but you'd think there should be some explicit mention of the ark. The fact that it's not mentioned lends some support to what is said here in the book of Maccabees, which is that it was hidden by Jeremiah before the Babylonians got there, and consequently, that's why it's not mentioned. Next is also from the book of Maccabees, And this says that, this refers to a time that Antiochus, after the death of Alexander, Alexander the Great, his kingdom divided into a number of different parts. There was of course, Greece itself and Macedonia. There was Egypt. Egypt was actually a Hellenistic kingdom, i.e. it was part of this Greek empire, and they had Greek culture, and it was ruled by the Ptolemies, Ptolemy, the Ptolemaic kingdom of Egypt. That was to the, obviously, as you know, the southwest of Israel. To the northeast of Israel was Syria. And Syria at the time was also part of the former Greek empire, and it was a Hellenistic colony, and it was ruled by a fellow by the name of Antiochus. Antiochus, so he was the ruler of the Seleucid Empire in Syria. So Antiochus, the Greek ruler, had smitten Egypt. He returned and he went up against Israel and Jerusalem with great multitude. Basically, he took a lot of troops and he invaded Israel. And he entered into the sanctuary. He took away the golden altar, the candlestick of light, and all the vessels, and the table of the showbread, and the pouring vessels, the vials, the censers of gold, the veil, the crown, the gold ornaments, silver, gold, and the hidden treasures which he found. He took them all away. He went to his own land, having made a great massacre and spoken proudly, and there was great mourning in Israel in every place where they came. So Antiochus, the Greek of Syria, comes into the temple, and he conquers, and he takes away all the vessels and the gold and the silver. But what's interesting is, if you look at the source in 1 Maccabees, it does not mention the Holy Ark again. It mentions many other treasures, the altar, etc., and lots of things they tried to hide, but it doesn't mention the Ark. Again, had he taken the Ark, you'd expect this to be mentioned. It doesn't mention it. So we have two sources in Maccabees, plus the book of Ezra and the book of Chronicles, none of which mention the Holy Ark as being taken. The book of Maccabees mentions the Holy Ark was hidden by Jeremiah. Now, this actually is a discussion in the Talmud. And if you look at the next source, it's the Gemara, the Talmud in Yoma, Tractate Yoma 53b. And it says this. The Mishnah says, when the ark was taken, there was a stone there from the days of earliest times, earliest prophets. It was called the foundation stone. There's a stone on the Temple Mount. It does not say when it was hidden, but when it was taken, in accordance with the one who says the ark was taken to Babylon. So interesting, the Mishnah says when the ark was taken, and the Talmud says, it doesn't say when it was hidden, it says when it was taken. So let's have a look at the Gemara here. We learnt, Rabbi Elazar said, the ark was taken to Babylon. As it states, at the turn of the year, King Nebuchadnezzar sent and had him brought to Babylon together with the precious articles of the temple of God. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai also says that the ark was taken to Babylon, as it states, behold, the days are coming when everything in your house and whatever your forefathers have accumulated to this day will be carried off to Babylon. Not a thing will be left, said God. So we have both Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai saying that the Mishnah is in accordance with our view, because the Mishnah says that the ark was taken to Babylon, and what was revealed when the ark was taken was something underneath, which was a rock that was there from the earliest days. So what is interesting is that that both of them, even though they say the ark was taken to Babylon, and the verses that they quote, that is to say, the verse in Chronicles and the verse in Isaiah, neither of those verses mention the ark. They just mention everything that was in the house. Now, could we wiggle out of this and say it doesn't include the ark? I think so, because what it says is, if you look carefully, in Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai quotes a verse in Isaiah, which says, everything in your house will be taken. Nothing will be left. But if it's true, what it says in Maccabees, which is that Jeremiah hid the ark, then the ark was not in the house at that time. So it's not included in that which it says in this verse, everything in the house will be taken. In any case, Rabbi Yehuda disagrees with both of them, and he says this, the ark was hidden in its place, as it states, and the tips of the staves were noticeable upon the partition from the sanctuary, but were not showing on the outside, and they remain there to this very day. The tips of the staves means the ark had these two rods or poles which went through rings on either side of the ark. And the tips of these arks protruded and pushed out the curtain that was in front of the Holy Ark. And it says, they remain there to this very day. So the book of Kings, it says they remain there to this very day, and Rabbi Yehuda maintains, differently than the book of Maccabees, he says the ark was hidden at that very place. In other words, somewhere in the Temple Mount, the ark was hidden. So this is not the same as it says in Maccabees. Maccabees says Jeremiah took it out of the temple and he hid it somewhere else, in a cave somewhere, in the mountain of God. Now that, I'm not sure what that refers to, but it says the mountain where God appeared to Moses. That could be Mount Sinai. We're not sure. But it's not the mountain, the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, because Moses never came to the land of Israel. He did not enter the land of Israel. So, but according to Rabbi Yehuda, the ark was hidden in the Temple Mount. So the Mishnah says a fascinating thing. Tractate Shkalim says this, I'll just tell you briefly outside the text, that in the temple there were 13 places they used to bow. There was a certain family of priests, the head priest, who used to bow at a 14th place because they had a tradition that was opposite where the ark was hidden. And it says that a certain Kohen priest was once working in this area. He noticed a tile that was different. He went back to tell his friends, I saw a tile. Before he could even tell them the rest of the story, he died. And it was that, because he died at that point, they realized this was divine providence, that God wanted the ark to be hidden. And they knew for sure that that's the place where the ark was hidden. So according to the Mishnah in Shkalim, and this is much more reliable than the book of Maccabees, and in the Mishnah, we are told the ark was hidden on the Temple Mount. We have also two other sources. In Avot de Reb Natan, that's an ancient Mishnaic source, these things were made and are hidden away. The tent of meeting and its utensils, the ark, the broken tablets, the flask of manna, the flask of anointing oil, the staff of Aaron with its blossoms and flowers, the clothes of the high priest and the anointed priest. However, the mortar of the house of Avtinas, they were a people that made the incense for the temple. The table, which had the showbread, the menorah, the candelabra, the curtain in front of the ark, the tzitz, that was the plate that was on the forehead of the high priest, they're all still in Rome. So various things, the list of things mentioned beforehand, including the ark, they were hidden away. The Romans didn't get them. What did the Romans get? The rest of the things in this list. And indeed, right, Maimonides tells us in the next source, there was a stone in the Holy of Holies in the west that the ark was placed on. In front of it was the flask of manna and the rod of Aaron. When Solomon built the temple and knew that it would be destroyed, eventually he built a place hidden and deep to hide the ark underneath the temple. King Josiah commanded that it be hidden in that place that King Solomon had built. The staff of Aaron, the flask of manna, the anointing oil were hidden with it. None of these things were returned during the Second Temple era. So according to Maimonides, there's a tradition that King Solomon actually built crypts and tunnels underneath the Temple Mount, and he hid away the Holy Ark in that area. And that's why, if you look at the Arch of Titus, which has a detail there, it's in Rome, and it shows things that were carried into Rome in the procession that marked the Roman victory over the Jews. On the Arch of Titus, it only has the menorah and it has some trumpets from the temple. And I would imagine if the Romans would have taken the Holy Ark, that would have prominently been displayed on the Arch of Titus. But it is not displayed there. Titus, who was the Roman Caesar, does not have inscribed on that ark inscribed on that arch the Holy Ark. So again, it seems to be further evidence that certain things were in Rome, but not the ark. And actually, if you look on the next page, the Midrash and various other sources say, it brings various rabbis went to Rome. Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Yossi said, I saw the parochet, that's the curtain in Rome, and there were a number of drops of blood on it. Rabbi Elazar from the priest sprinkling blood from the sacrifices. Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Yossi said, I saw the tzitz, that means the forehead plate of the high priest, in Rome, and holy unto God was written on one line. The embalmed face of Rabbi Shmuel the high priest, the Talmud says, was embalmed at the order of Caesar when he died, because he was very beautiful, very handsome, and they wanted to preserve his face. And Rashi, who wrote in the 11th century, says it's still found in the treasure houses of Rome. And in the Medrash, we are told that the broken pieces of the royal throne were found in Rome. So again, this does not refer to the Holy Ark. this refers to various other treasures of the temple, which almost certainly were taken to Rome. And if you look on the next screen, we have here, this is from Josephus Flavius, who is a very famous Jewish Roman historian, who writes that Vespasian had something called the Temple of Peace. Ironically, that was the temple where he displayed the treasures he looted from countries that he had conquered. So in the Temple of Peace. And Josephus writes that he laid the vessels of gold from the temple of the Jews in which he prided himself. There in the Temple of Peace were all on display the various vessels from the temple. And so therefore, when the Talmud and the Midrash says in the previous sources that I noted that rabbis went to Rome and saw these things in Rome, it was not hard to see because they were apparently on display in the Temple of Peace of Vespasian. Therefore, in conclusion, right, we would say the following. A few things. According to Maimonides, there's no obligation to ever build an ark for all generation. There was only one command to ever build the ark that was given to Bezalel in the time of Moses and Aaron. According to Nachmanides, by the way, disagrees. He says there's actually a mitzvah to build the ark if you don't have one. But anyway, according to most opinions, and certainly according to Maimonides, since only one ark was ever built and ever supposed to be built, that ark was hidden away under the Temple Mount, and according to some, it's directly under the Holy of Holies. There was a rabbi in recent times who made an attempt to dig in that area. The Israeli government felt that it would be the situation was too volatile and it would create riots and wars with the Arabs. We don't need to provoke them further. They want to destroy us anyway. So basically they cemented up that area, and now it's a sealed off area under the Temple Mount. If you go to there are tunnels that go next to the Western Wall, which tourists can go through when you go to Israel. You could go through those tunnels, walk next to the Western Wall, but underground. So you're actually walking on the pavement from the temple era. You can see the bedrock of Mount Moriah, and on top of it the wall. And there's a place you can stand there directly opposite the Holy of Holies. And there's actually a synagogue, small underground synagogue there, which people pray in every day, directly opposite the Holy of Holies. It is believed that it could very well be that's where the Holy Ark is hidden to this very day. According to some, the ark with the tablets is under the Temple Mount. The second ark was taken to Babylon with the broken tablets. And according to many, the ark will be revealed before the coming of the Messiah. And according to Nachmanides, it'll be carried with the Jewish army during the final wars. And the return of the ark to its correct place will herald the return of prophecy to the Jewish people. So that's a little bit of an introduction to the whole subject. You can look further into it with the sources I gave you. And I want to thank you very much for watching. This is Mordechai Becher with Shalom TV, Dimensions of the Daf. If you want to see me live and at various lectures, go to gatewaysonline.org, where it has my lecture schedule and our seminars. And we have, by the way, for those who are interested, December 25th, if you're seeing this before December 25th, Gateways is having a weekend seminar. Check our website, gatewaysonline.org, and to learn everything you want to know about Judaism in 3 days, good food, great hotel, and a great time, Hanover, New Jersey. So get onto the website, and my book, Gateway to Judaism, available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and in Jewish bookstores. Thank you very much.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who can send a tax-deductible contribution of $36 or more to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media to help support our programming. Please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD, and we thank you for your kind support.